Welcome back to the channel, guys. We haven't done a tier list in a while, and I thought we're going to recap 2023 with the best manhwa of the year that I actually read all the way through up to where they're at. I've read a lot more manhwa than this in the past year. However, these are the ones I stuck with and actually can comment on where they're at because I am up to date on it. You can be like, what? That's it? Honestly, I think 2023 was one of the weakest years in manhwa since I've been reading manhwa. A lot of my favorite manhwas just had terrible arcs this year, and the new stuff that came out just did not hit the way I was hoping it would. So now, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the tier list. Starting off with Infinite Mage. Okay, Infinite Mage has been an interesting one, and there's been this little trend. I won't say it's a new thing necessarily, but in the manhwa space, I will say we've seen a lot of these stoic, quiet, strong protagonists over the past few years, or a little bit of the hotheads, like the Naruto characters kind of passing over into the manhwa world. But there's been this growing trend of, I'll call them soft boy protagonists. Infinite Mage is an example of it. Eleceed is another one. And a couple of other ones, and I'll comment on them as we get through, because there's a few I've been following this year. And they tend to be characters that are not as strong of character. They're very soft. They're very peace-loving characters. This is not a negative comment by any means, but it definitely gives a different vibe of protagonist, and I am digging it. Digging the fact that we're getting different types of main characters. Sung Jin-woo was great, but I'm a little tired of always that quiet, badass protagonist, though I can't deny that I've enjoyed it more than I probably should. That being said, what do I think about Infinite Mage? I think it had a really good year this year, and I think, honestly, with the chapter that I just read this week, he's gotten mega strong, and he's positioned himself in an interesting way to be this. He's probably the most powerful character ever in that world, but he just doesn't have the education to use it. And that's just something that I believe is done really well in this series, and the whole mathematics of the magic is something that I've really, really liked. That being said, it's slow. It's really not getting anywhere quickly. It spent, I think, something like 3 chapters doing teleportation, 3 or 4 chapters, and anyway, it's not a quick manhwa. I think it had a pretty good year. I think it deserves to be in a solid B tier quality manhwa. Listen, it's still relatively young. I think it has the potential to rise, but I think based on its year, right now it's sitting around the B tier. And when I'm doing these ratings, I do want to put in perspective, I'm going to be rating their year, not their overall rating. So there's manhwa here you're going to see in lower rate grading than the overall manhwa probably is, but I am grading 2023 as a year for these manhwa, and that's it. That's my list. That's the way I'm going to do it. All right, Eleceed. Eleceed had a hell of a year. We had some amazing moments with the protagonist, but I'd say this wasn't his year to shine, though there were some amazing moments. His master, his leader, I'll call it the big cat, had a chance to really shine this year. I think this is Eleceed's S year. I think it was great, exciting chapters, and just a lot of fun overall. Leveling with the Gods. I have to say, I have fallen out of love with this manhwa. I keep up with it because I still think from its art style and its really long tower climbing story, it has a lot to offer, but I really don't think it's that much fun to read anymore. I think it had a kind of mediocre year. The whole thing of him descending another tower. I'm forgetting the Japanese deity that he was there with. Oh my lord. There's just a lot of stuff that happened this year that was not that exciting. I think this was Leveling with the Gods C tier year. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's worthy of D tier, but I don't think it's worthy of this series whatsoever. Okay, the Undefeatable or the Unbeatable Swordsman. I feel bad for this manhwa because it's been nothing but a downward spiral ever since I started reading it, and it really kills me. The beginning of it, honestly, was a blast to read. I was firing through these chapters because I actually started reading it relatively late. I think there was already like 80 chapters of it when I started reading it, and it was solid, great fights, a great protagonist, a great evolution of characters around him, a huge ensemble cast, big stakes in the world. But this story has just not been interesting for quite some time. And this past year, this past year has been even worse than normal. I still read it for some reason, but I do admit that it's probably closest right now on the list of being dropped. I'm going to give it a D tier year. I'm keeping up with it, but just barely. Return of the Crazy Demon. Okay, Return of the Crazy Demon is one of the most consistent manhwa I have ever seen. From the first chapter all the way to today, it has continuously delivered on just an insane protagonist. I can't say it any other way. And it remains really good. And I think this year was a lot of the same. I think I can solidly say it's an A-class year. I don't think it's doing anything special. I don't think it surpassed itself this year to become the top tier thing out there. But I will say that it continues to be a fun ride. Though I am a little bit over the gimmick by now, but it's still enjoyable. SSS class Revival Hunter is a manhwa that I had, I'll be honest, till last week was not up to date on. I'm doing a review of it for 2023, even though I only caught up to it in 2024. But I will say it's really good. SSS class Revival Hunter had an amazing 2023. A really solid year. I'm a little ashamed that I didn't keep up with it. The protagonist is not, I'm not that crazy about it. But I do think it had a great year. I think it's worth an A. I'm trying to avoid spoilers a little bit in this, so that you can go and enjoy it if you're not quite up to date on these manhwa. But at least it gives you an idea of, hey, if this is really good right now, maybe you should jump into it, or maybe you shouldn't. Kill the Hero, I'm going to give a bit more spoilers to. Kill the Hero ended this year, technically. Kill the Hero ended this year, and there was an announcement at the bottom of the chapter saying, thank you for reading, it was a pleasure to write this, and all that. And a few months pass. And after what was honestly kind of a disappointing ending, it ended before the ending, which is absolutely insane to me. But it got to its point. There was a specific goal of this story, and he achieved the goal, and it ended. And everyone was like, oh, that's it. And then the author dropped more chapters. I don't know if this was planned all along or something the author decided to do just simply from the interest in the story or the backlash or whatnot. But we've had a little bit of closure, and actually, I finished reading a chapter today that just came out. I don't know how long they're going to go with it. Right now, it feels like just after stories or bonus stories. But they're closing the loop on things. They're giving us a little bit more with the story, and I do think it's a better story for it to a certain extent. It's not the same. I will say the ending is very, very different than the story was. But because of this, I'm going to give it a B tier because nonetheless, the final fight was kind of disappointing, I'll be honest. It just didn't live up. Talent Swallowing Magician. Talent Swallowing Magician was a fantastic early manhwa. What a great first year it had. It restarted a few months ago, and it has not been working out well for me. I'm not enjoying it. I'm letting them pile up a few weeks now before I watch chapters, which is not a great sign. I want to be excited about the next chapter coming out. I'm going to drop you down in the C tier, but you could easily fall into the D tier here. All right, Murim Login. Oh, man. Murim Login's another story of a manhwa that I was not keeping up with consistently, but I caught up with this year, and I'm up to date right now. And Murim Login had a fantastic year. I say 2023 wasn't a good year, really. But that's just because the year before, I think I had 100 of these, and now I cut it down to 50-something that I'm keeping up with because so many of them just disappointed. Murim Login had a fantastic year. Protagonist is in a great moment in the story, and I'm loving the character interactions. The comedy's still working. The fights are fantastic, and the game systems here work really well for me. I think Murim Login is legit. Well, I just made a list of it, but it's definitely one of the best game manhwa out there for sure. I'm putting it in the A tier. I don't think it has as good a year as Eleceed, but it's top tier. Absolute Sword Sense. Absolute Sword Sense killed it this year, in my opinion. I really like this manhwa. Honestly, if I think about the story that I've read, it's not ground shaking or innovative in any way, but it's a lot of fun. I really like the protagonist. There's a lot of these beat down or beat back moments of a character, people underestimating the protagonist. He has a really interesting power set. Actually, he has a similar thing to the egos from the player that can't level up, that he can speak to swords, but it's a very different type of power. These swords know the histories of their fighters. They care about their owners. It's an interesting concept, and I think that it is killing it from the same creator as Nano Machine, but definitely delivering a bit better than Nano Machine this year. I'm going to put this in the A tier as well, and I'll be honest, for my own enjoyment, it's really close to the S tier. Chronicles of Heavenly Demon. This is one of the great manhwa, I will say. I think it's not, I don't know if it's a top 10 all time, but it's definitely top 20 all time. Chronicles of Heavenly Demon is definitely in its portion of its story that is just not as interesting. Because every couple of chapters, we just get a few people sent towards the protagonist for him to fight. He mops the floor with them, or he gets a bit of a challenge, and then we move on. But the level of mystery, investigation, or discovery that was taking place before, it's just not there anymore, and it's really unfortunate because what a great manhwa this has been. That being said, I think this year for me lands in the C tier. I don't think it delivered great this year. Legend of the Northern Blade killed me this year. Legend of Northern Blade killed me this year. So we had the time jump this year. We had a time jump where we resumed the story, and we came off of what I think, if I make a list of top 10 best arcs in manhwa, I think the one that precedes this one is probably the best one for this series, and probably one of the better ones in manhwa. Finishing with moments not about the best fights, and there were some fights at the end that were definitely at the heights, but just emotion and character moments at the end that really, really hit home and worked really well. So when you get the time jump and all of a sudden every chapter is fight after fight after fight, and a lot of these characters that you thought you'd never actually see fight each other till like maybe 100 chapters down the road are fighting and dying like really quickly, and they're losing their value, their importance in the story, and that kind of sucked. That's where we're at right now, and we're already seeing like final bosses starting to appear, and like the way it feels, at least at the pace it's going now, feels like this manhwa has like 20 chapters left. Easily this manhwa could have been another 50, 100, 150 chapters with the characters that we met and the villains, but we're rushing to the ending right now. There's a lot of characters that were really important that were killed off fairly easily and uninterestingly, and now we're at those final battle points, and we'll see how it goes. I do think it's putting the legacy in question of this manhwa, and it really maybe shows me that maybe the author didn't quite know how to stick the landing, if you will, with the series, but this is probably my biggest disappointment of the year. I won't say it's a D tier. The fights are still fantastic, but I'm putting Legend of Northern Blade in B tier, and this should be S forever, and there's no reason that it should be. Oh, the beginning after the end. Oh, how you have fallen. Beginning after the end had a tough year for a few reasons, and I do want to be like fair to it to a certain extent. There's been controversy around this manhwa, the artist kind of stepping away. We got there's been a really long pause between seasons, which means we only have like half a year of chapters to look at, and we've had this little like one shot of the main character's sister's adventure kind of thing, or the origin story of one of the assassin type character that's in his team. And it was, I'll be honest, I found the art looked kind of terrible, like worse than normal, and I always have a gripe with Tales of Beginning After the End's art. I don't think the art is great, but man, has it not worked. And the year, while there have been some great reunion moments of Tess coming back with Arthur, and like it was good, the whole training arc, very boring to me, like not very interesting. I don't think that Beginning After the End had a great year. I think it's still a phenomenal manhwa. I think it's really, really good, but man, did it not work for me. I know it is loved to death, but I'm putting in the C tier because I really did not like this year. And unlike Legend of the Blade, which I think had some redeeming fights that were legit phenomenal fights, visually at least. I didn't get that redeeming factor from the beginning after the end this year. Damn Reincarnation's a weird one. It's consistent. It's slow. And I don't think that's a problem for it. I think Damn Reincarnation is going to be very good for someone that binges it when it's done. And honestly, I think that's okay. I'd rather the manhwa be fantastic beginning to end, but I will say it's not like a Soul Leveling where they manage to fit the pacing and always feel like it's breakneck pace no matter what we do. This is not that kind of manhwa, but it's I'm actually really curious about the story, like about what exactly was the deal that was made years ago. Like, I have ideas, I have theories, some of them have been disproven, and some of them, actually, probably the one I have is probably most likely to happen, but I like the fact that they're making it a mystery. It's a series that looks like it would be purely about fighting, but it's really not been, and the protagonist, yeah, he's really strong compared to the people around him, and with reason. He lived a life previously, and he has skills from then. He's not stronger than everyone, and he was shown just how he's at the mercy of certain characters in this season. So I think it was a solid season. It continues to be really good. I don't think it's its best season. I hope not. I think it's a solid A tier, though. Really fantastic series. All right, Tales of Demons and Gods. Tales of Demons and Gods finally got to the point where our protagonist is no longer just a student in a school. He's now jumped to the leader of a sect. What I will say, it happens like that instantaneously, pretty much. And it feels rushed and weird. I'd be curious for someone that reads a light novel of this one to see if that tracks with the light novel. Also, we are I think 3 chapters away from reaching where the light novel is at. I'll be curious to see if they continue beyond it and just make their own story from here, or if they're going to stop and wait for Mad Snail to continue. Mad Snail is notorious for jumping to other projects and not finishing the previous, or slowing it down significantly. So we'll see. That being said, I think the year was okay. I don't think this manhwa, it's a Chinese manhwa, I don't think it's fantastic, but I do think that it consistently delivers. Fairly good chapters, though they are exceedingly short. I'll just give it a B tier. Alright, Infinite Leveling Murim. Alright, this one opened up this year. It was interesting. We saw the characters going into the outside world, not just being in school. This happened over maybe the last 2 months, 3 months. And I enjoyed the end of the school arc. I think it was really good. And I've enjoyed the outside world. And I've enjoyed that the protagonist is not able to win every one of his fights. We came across a character in this season that is excessively strong. No one can fight him. And it just kind of made me think of, if there's this one guy that can beat an army to himself, the way you have to position in the battle is interesting. And they legit had to do that. They had to send armies to different places. That's not exactly how the strategy approached, but to win battles, they had to go, originally and interestingly. And it was really good. I'm not gonna lie. This is a manhwa I'm always excited to read every chapter, and I'm looking forward to seeing the end of this fight that we're currently in right now quite a bit. This is an A tier. It's right up there with S tier. I will not deny. Okay, Reaper of the Drifting Moon. Wow, what a great end of season. Well, end of season. It's a story that's very very thin. The water is not very deep on this one. We have a character that's, 1, visuals are fantastic, but 2, it's very fighting driven. There's very little else than fighting going on in this series. Though there are some interplay between the sects. If you think about it, the protagonist was just destroying everyone. But now in the new season, things are a little bit different because he just doesn't have the information, and he's slowly gathering it. He's came across people that are stronger than him, which was something new to a certain extent. For a while, he hasn't faced that kind of thing. I think Reaper of the Drifting Moon is a top-tier manhwa that is worth reading. I don't think it's super exciting at the place where it is right now, but I still think it's very interesting. All right, I'm going to put this in the B tier because I think that's about right. Okay, The Breaker, Return of Focus. The Breaker, if you don't know, is my favorite manhwa of all time. Actually, The Breaker New Waves is, which is its second season, technically speaking. Phenomenal martial arts manhwa, amazing story of a student wanting to kind of save his master to a certain extent, who has gone to the dark side. In this season, I was fucking hating this season so much of this manhwa because I was so excited for it coming back. And one, they introduced a character to act as our proxy to introduce people that haven't kept up with the series. It was on hiatus for like 5 years, to be fair. And that character's annoying and he just slowed things down. And now we're more at a place where our protagonist kind of had to go back to basics, learn his things. And I really dug it. And now he's fighting and I don't quite know the direction it's going to go based on this. But I think we're in a good spot. I don't think, though, it had a great year, but I'd say it had a great last quarter of the year. So for that reason, I'll drop it in the B tier, but this is super biased because that quarter of the year was I really, really enjoyed. All right, The World After the End. This thing makes, I won't say it makes little sense. It makes sense in its own world. But it's not great. If anyone's trying to say, wow, I love the story of The World After the End, I'm not too sure. What you can say that you like is that its world is kind of interesting. The way it's created chaos and the gods in the new space and the things like that, it's original. It's interesting. I can't pretend that it's not. It is legitimately original. Visually, still looks phenomenal. Can't deny it. The fights are bombastic, blasting. The whole thing of the way he fights with single motions like stab or slash, I hate it. I can't. I don't find it interesting. I feel like I'm playing an RPG where I'm pressing attack and it's like stab, 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 stab. It's just not. I still read it, though, because I can't say it doesn't deliver any other aspects of it. So for that reason, story-wise, it hasn't delivered. It hasn't delivered anything. I think the God's World introduces interesting things. I'll give it a B tier this year, because I do think, actually, that this season is better than the previous year. Or this year is a bit better than the previous year, because it's just interesting. We'll see where it goes, though. All right, Volcanic Age. I'm okay with this. I think that when it comes to Murim Manhwa, Volcanic Age is the often ugly stepchild of the Manhwa world. It's not quite of the Murim world, at least. It's not quite as liked as other Murim Manhwa, but it's a solid one that continues to develop like what looks like is going to be a really long story. Overall, though, I think this year was not a year to shine or be down. I think it was an okay year overall. Pick Me Up Infinite Gacha. Okay. Pick Me Up Infinite Gacha was a manhwa I didn't think had a ton of potential. When I first read it, the idea of a character being pulled into his gacha world and he's a character in the game, we've seen that kind of stuff before. Either the game becomes real, the world becomes the game, one of the things, but the protagonist gets thrown in, and I think it is one of the best manhwa out there right now. I would put that in my top 10 right now. The stakes for the characters and how easy it is to die in this world, the idea of sacrificing human beings or sacrificing people to summon others in a gacha system is terrifying. And overall, the character interactions, the story, character interactions and the different levels of this game that they're in make this a compelling narrative that is far better than it should be allowed to be. I think this year, it's an S tier. I know, but it is what it is. I'm putting it there. Your thoughts? I maybe you don't think it's that high up there, but I know it gets a lot of love, so I'm curious on your thoughts of it. All right, Superhuman Era. This one took me forever to catch up to because I am so done with superheroes for a little bit. But Superhuman Era is really, really good. The visuals are phenomenal. The fights this year have been fantastic. I really, really enjoyed them. Story-wise, Superhuman Era is okay. I don't think it's revolutionary, but it's also the type of material it's playing with. But for its fight alone, I'm gonna keep it in the B tier. I think I'm gonna keep it in the A tier because I think it did deliver really well this year. I think it was really good. All right, Mercenary Enrolment. Okay, so I'm gonna gripe a bit. Mercenary Enrolment needs to finish. It should be done already. Like it just needs to finish. It's been repetitive for a long time, but I definitely don't care about the stakes anymore. There's new groups that were introduced this year, particularly later in the year. There was a good arc. There was a good arc this year of him kind of coming into contact with his previous partners, where he got to... I don't like the scenario of how it happened, but I do like that he got closure on that topic, and that felt like something that needed to happen in the story from the way it's been set up since early on. And they closed the book on something this year, but then they introduced, like, you know, when there's an organization, but there's actually another organization above it that's managing this organization. Oh my god, we need to defeat this organization. It feels like that. It's in this case, but that's actually a change, because normally it's, oh my god, we need to rescue this person. Oh no, this other person's been kidnapped. Let's rescue them. It's just very repetitive. It's unfortunate because he's a great protagonist who's had these great emotional moments of growing as a character. Emotional moments. He shows a smile with his and seeing his family get kidnapped, particularly his grandfather get kidnapped was something very, like, kind of grabbed you of, like, he's not solid. He's fragile. He could pass away from this. But anyway, I think it should end. I don't think it was its best year by any means. I'm actually going to put this down in the B tier. Lookism. Lookism had a strong year this year. Another manhwa that I had skipped out on for way too long. I do think it's really not for everyone. Lookism lovers will say that this thing, everyone should be reading it. I strongly disagree. Lookism should not be read by everyone. It is ugly to a lot of people. And to the way bullying is portrayed in this manhwa is rough sometimes. Like, honestly, it's rough. Like, absurdly rough. I'm sure there's situations that happen, but there's just so much bullying in this series that's just like, dude, these are terrible schools. It's horrible. That being said, it was a great year. Great character moments, good fighting. I think it deserves to be in the A tier for this year. It's really good. All right, the player that can't level up. A consistently strong manhwa that I think goes underloved by a lot of people. A good year, nothing overwhelming. I think it deserves to be in the B tier this year. Okay, Boundless Necromancer. Boundless Necromancer is what should be a very forgettable series, and in a lot of ways it is. Its power scaling is kind of nuts. Protagonist has gone in 1 year from being like, let's just say he'd have trouble breaking walls at the beginning of the year, to now he has the power to, like, at least affect cities. Maybe not in completely, but he's strong. He's very, very strong now. And it's been a hell of a year for that reason. That being said, story-wise, not a lot going on here. Is it fun to read because it looks pretty and does a lot of pow-pows? Yeah, it is. I can't deny that. But still, I can't give it more than the C tier because I find that it's scaled really quickly without giving us much reason to be rooting for the protagonist, is what I should say. Nano Machine. Nano Machine. Oh man, Nano Machine has been such a disappointment over the past year. Nano Machine probably was on most people's top 10 list. As a fighting manhwa and a Murim manhwa, it was like top 2, top 3, guaranteed for pretty much everyone in that space that didn't hate Murim. Some people really hate Murim manhwa. That first arc, first goal, objective ends. New objective starts. Our protagonist is way too powerful. Our protagonist is ridiculously powerful now. And he's been ridiculously powerful in regards to pretty much everyone that's around him, everyone that follows him, everyone he's interacted with. He's just now on a whole other level. But the reason I'm angry at it is because they introduced a way that he got stronger that I felt was just so stupid. I know he has nano machines, magical nano machines that basically make him extremely powerful, which is stupid as well, to a certain extent. But the whole harem angle or introduction of a female character, an additional one, was so frustrating. Ugh, I got angry. And like, I'm not the biggest fan of harem series. You might know this. I really don't like them, but I could live with them in some series. In this one, it felt completely unnecessary. And this, obviously the protagonist is still acting loyal to this, the main girl and all that, but just the introduction of how he power scaled was just really devastated me this year. And I think story-wise, I think it's D tier for what it's done this year. I do think it's done some things okay. But for the heights that it was at and the low that it fell, I think it's in D tier right now. Am I going to drop it? Probably not for a bit, but it is getting closer than it should be. Heavenly Inquisition Sword is a manhwa that I feel has outlived its welcome because it's not changing quick enough. The whole idea of the protagonist escaping to be with these bandits and learning family and all these things from them was good. I really liked that. It worked really well. But it should be done already. He should have moved on from them already because he's overstaying his welcome with them, I feel, just because he's been one far more powerful than them from the beginning. But it's not allowing us to get him to interact with other people in meaningful enough ways. It's having other characters do those interactions, and he's only a brute in his group. And there's a million reasons from a story perspective that does make sense, but I will say that I am not enjoying this one much anymore, and I think I might be near dropping it. So I'm going to put it in the C tier here. Maybe near D tier, actually. Okay, Solo Max Level Newbie. Solo Max Level Newbie is probably, again, another one of those extremely consistent manhwa that, whereas there was this leveling with the gods, Solo Max Level Newbie side by side for a while there, where I'd say they were both really killing it with great itemization, great great story / character interactions. Now I'd say Solo Max Level Newbie is the only one in that space that's doing it well. I don't think it did anything that was particularly dramatically good this year, but I do think that his interactions with other characters are kind of what make him better than the character of leveling with the gods. He has built allies and friends, and while he is still manipulative and kind of a dick, it's good and it's enjoyable. And I won't quite put it in the A tier because I don't think this year was anything special for it, but it's not one I'm going to drop anytime soon, and it's still pretty good. Windbreaker had an okay year this year. I'm not gonna lie, this manhwa had so much more potential to me when it started than where it's at. I feel like it's taking a long time to get places, though there were some great moments this year now that I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of one specifically that I quite liked. Okay, I don't think it's a C then. I'm gonna drop it in the B tier. Windbreaker's still really good, but I don't think it's quite killing it for me. All right, Great Mage Returns. Great Mage Returns had its year this year. I don't think it's quite as good as the arc where with the demigod that was their ally, which with a really meaningful death that season, which really it kind of hit home. It was a really, really good character story. Despite me not liking all of that arc, that turned out to make it really good. This year was the one where the protagonist powered up, started fighting against some of the big bads of the story, and now we're coming into a different stage. It looked like we were about to have the final fight to a certain extent. Clearly, it's not the case. There's a whole new season coming. It had its year. I think if you like Great Mage Return, you had a great year with it. If it's not in your favorites, it probably didn't do anything special. I think Great Mage Return deserves to be an A, because this year was definitely delivering at a higher level than its average was before. Returns Magic should be special. Got an anime this year, and also had a great season of its manhwa. Its manhwa has been really good of late, and it continues to have really good relationships with characters within the story overall. So I'm going to put this one over. I'm going to put this one in the A tier as well. I think it just had a great year. Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint is like Legend of Northern Blade this year. It under-delivered like crazy. But I don't think it's the Manhwa's fault. It's actually the light novel's fault. From everyone that I've heard of that read the light novel, they said this is the weakest arc by far, which encourages me. The Pygmy arc this year was, I'm going to outright say boring, not very interesting. We had one or two moments and some like twists with his mother. Anyway, things that I just did not work whatsoever for me. I think that this is the weakest season it's had, and because of how far it's dropped. No, even that I can't put it in D tier. It's not that bad. Even Nano Machine, it's a bit of a harsh punishment to put it all the way down here. Nah, I can't say that it's worth the Volcanic Age. Alright, putting Nano Machine back up. Jesus, I'm so inconsistent. But hey, you can't say that they're D tier. It's a special class to be in D tier in stuff that I actually still read. But anyway. Alright, Return to the Manhwa Sect is one of the best Manhwa out there right now. Phenomenal year, phenomenal consistent Manhwa. I think it is always top tier. It is a really near S. Always solid. This is the Archmage, youngest scion of mages. Youngest scion of mages has some good moments in it. I just don't think it's. I don't know why I still read this one. I enjoy these magic stories with characters that have returned and like get own the previous characters that wronged them in the previous life. But I can't pretend that it was a good year. It's not a good manhwa. It's one of those guilty pleasure kind of things. I'm going to put it down in D because I don't think it's story-wise or anything like that is doing much better than the other. Dungeon Odyssey, I follow this one just because it's different. Dungeon Odyssey, the idea of developing your own dungeon and having heroes and adventurers kind of interact with it and like setting up traps and monsters and everything. It's cool. It's an interesting manhwa. I don't think it does anything special. I think it's a solid C tier manhwa as a year in general, but as a manhwa overall, that's kind of where it stands. Okay, Return to the Max Level Hero. It's consistent. I don't know what. This is one of the ones where I should have dropped this a long time ago. I complain about this so consistently. This character is a Gary Stu, 100%. He's good at everything. Nothing he's bad at. It kills me. Okay, this is probably the best manhwa, new manhwa of 2023 in my opinion. And that is the 100th Regression. What's the exact name? Max Level Player's 100th Regression. The art style's phenomenal. The character and what he's gone through is kind of nuts. Going through 100 different lives. And you kind of feel it. You feel the differences. I think this is a solid A-tier manhwa right now. Will it live up to it over time? We'll see. I've heard really good things from the people that have read the light novel, and thank you for those comments, guys, that this is actually a phenomenal one, and if the manhwa delivers what the light novel does, that's really encouraging. Greatest Estate Developer. Okay, this is fun. This manhwa and just his evil grin, smile, and laughter is joy incarnate. Was it the best year for the manhwa? Yeah, I'd argue it was probably its best year so far. Is it a top tier manhwa? I think it's up there. I think it deserves to at least be up in the A tiers for sure. Okay, Duke Pendragon. I have a lot of stuff in my A tier, don't I? Actually, I'm gonna drop some of these because I feel like we're getting too much in the A tier. It's not fair. Okay, Superhuman Era, I'm going to drop you down to the B tier. I'm comfortable with the rest. Duke Pendragon. Duke Pendragon had some great moments this year of a character and coming to grips with who he is and what he is, the world that's around him. I think it's one of the best manhwa of the year by a long shot. I don't think it's an S tier manhwa. I don't think it's to that point, but I do think it's consistently good. I'm going to give it an A tier. All right, Killer Pietro. So at the beginning of the year, there's a couple of manhwa that came out that were kind of, I won't say, it's kind of similar vibes to them, like assassin, murderer, or just really brutal series. Killer Pietro was one of them. It's turned out to be pretty fun. It's its first year, so I do want to put that in perspective. It's pretty fun. I don't think it's the best. I'm going to put it in the C tier, but I will say that if you're down for some violence and also high school hijinks, I guess, there's some interesting stuff in this manhwa. Okay, the detective, I forget the exact name of this one. Return of the Bloodthirsty Police. So this came out again at the same time. Character's an assassin, gets betrayed by the leader of the assassins just as he's about to retire. Not what I sounds very original. Comes back as a police officer that was being bullied, that had ended his own life, and is now going to work to get revenge by using the police and justice on the guy that betrayed him. It's a series that unfortunately does a lot of effort at putting things in the way of the main character achieving his goal. Because he's chosen kind of... It's like if you have a straight path to achieving something and you're like, I'm going to take the detour around this so that I can get there another way. That's the way it feels for this, and it feels very obvious. And I have to put it in the D tier, though I've enjoyed it nonetheless. Okay, so Devil Returns to School Days is a manhwa that I've enjoyed much more than it deserves to be. Killer Returns to School Days. Is it Killer Returns to School Days? Devil Returns to School Days. Like, the revenge that he gets on these kids that bullied him and led him to the hospital is so satisfying, but also so extreme in some cases. Well, to be fair, they did lead him to pretty much die. That is fair to get revenge on that, but it's kind of nuts that that's how far it went. But the story, the writing is not great, particularly if you start reading. The more you start reading into it, like really read the dialogue, it's really not great. Some of it might be translation based, but I do think it's just not a perfect series by any means. I think it's D, just because of the bad writing of the story, but I can't deny that I read it because I find the revenge side fun. But I am getting a little tired of it now, and I might end up dropping it. Ranker's Return, consistently strong. I don't think it delivered anything new this year. I find it a little, I won't say empty, but it just doesn't have the same kind of stakes I care about. I think it does a good job with the way they've done the series, and it was definitely worth a remake and the way they did it. But I'm gonna put it as C tier because not delivering anything special. Okay, the S classes I raised. This is the other soft boy character I was talking about. Great character interactions in this, really good family dynamics and relationships. Story continues to be pretty compelling. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I think it had a relatively good year. Frozen Player. Okay, so Frozen Player feels like a manhwa that should have come out 15 years ago. A lot of the stuff it's doing feels a little dated to me. I can't even quite put the finger on why that's the case, but I don't think it's doing anything special lately. And earlier this year had its season and it ended on a hiatus after that. I'm going to put it in the C tier because I do not think that it's killing it particularly right now. All right, the game I came from, I was really enjoying for quite some time until I did the thing where you start reading and you realize that the dialogues and the characters and the art is all really bad. The main character's okay, but everyone around him is kind of terrible. And it just feels like you're playing with a bunch of 6-year-olds online, which kind of sucks. That being said, I think it has one of the best defined VR worlds. It did a great job at doing that. That being said, I don't think it's great. I don't think the year is great, but I don't think the manhwa is great. Why do I still read it? That's a good question. I do think I'm about to drop it, to be fair. I'm going to put it down in the D tier for this year. Trash of the Count's Family. Okay, so I can't deny Trash of the Count's Family is a beautiful series that has great writing, a good world-building character situation, but I'm getting tired of it. And this morning I was able to kind of figure out, oh, that's why I'm tired of it. And the reason I'm tired of it is the whole third person. The main character is in his head a lot. Much more than he is interacting. And he's dealing with things in a very passive way. He's not an action-oriented character. He's a very planning character. And I'll be honest, I'm a little tired of it. From a storyline perspective, I think it's a solid C tier. I don't think it had an amazing year. It's a Manhwa that probably deserves better, but I guess the pace of the series also matches its aesthetic and art style. It does have a certain vibe that leans more to a lot of the romance manhwas and the way that its dynamics are created, and that feels like the pacing from those series in a lot of cases. Okay, Windbreaker. I think Windbreaker had a good season. It's going to be hard for me because the year before had just an amazing Windbreaker season. So good that it was like... Was it my number 1 last year? It was in the top 5 for sure. But what a phenomenal year it had last year. I think it was good this year. We spent a lot of time with characters I don't care about this year. That's the one thing that for me was like... eh. And I may be heartless to say this, but that's kind of where I'm at. You're going to notice that Tower of God's not on this list, and that's because I'm behind on Tower of God and I need to catch up, but I've fallen out of love with that manhwa. The other thing I forgot to put on this list is Magic Emperor. It should be here. I did include Chinese manhwa here that I'm following. Magic Emperor had an okay year. I'm kind of done with this arc. I kind of want to get... I'm looking forward to what they do with it as he changes area and meets completely new people. But that being said, I am looking forward to wrapping this up so that we can see what's going on. I think I would have put Magic Emperor probably around the B tier, most likely. Okay, Skeleton that failed to protect the dungeon. It's good. I didn't feel anything special. I guess I'm gonna put it in the C tier. I didn't feel anything special from it this year that made it. It's got a lot of chapters now. Is it at 200 yet? I'm forgetting, but it's at quite a bit of chapters now, and so there's been a lot of storytelling. Also, following a skeleton around can kind of lose engagement a little bit sometimes. Overpowered Sword had a great year, guys. I think Overpowered Sword was so much more than I thought it could be. We talked about Manhwa like Omniscient Reader that just was like, you're disappointing me this year. This was the opposite. This one really surpassed expectations. I think it's A tier for this year because I think that first arc, that first ending of season was kind of perfect. And it's a good introduction into, like, we're going on an adventure to the next place. All right, the Lord's Coins aren't decreasing. The gimmick has been going on a little bit long here. I do think it's getting a little old. Not enjoying it as much as I was. I do think it's still different enough that it's worth checking out because it doesn't feel the same as everything else. But I'm going to put it at C for its story this year, for just did not quite deliver. This is Existence. Existence is probably the biggest disappointment in Manhwa in years. Honestly. Existence, when I read the first couple of chapters, I was like, this could be a masterpiece. Visually, story-wise. But honestly, the story is a D. The stuff that it did this year just did not work. It's so freaking frustrating. And I recommended it so much at the beginning. Return of the Disaster Class Hero is a good manhwa. It's definitely not the solo max level newbie next of kin that it was supposed to be. Not solo max level newbie. Solo leveling next of kin, because it was supposed to be the next big thing, and I don't think it is. I think other things have kind of surpassed it by a long shot. That being said, I still think it's good. It had a good season earlier this year with good character moments. Protagonist is kind of fun to follow around because he's very sarcastic and I won't say evil, but kind of mean about things. I'm gonna put this in the B tier for this year. Heavenly Demon Instructor, I think that's the one. This is a manhwa that ended this year, and I have to say, I enjoyed it probably more than most people. This manhwa follows a character that ends up being taught by a Heavenly Demon character from the Murim world, and the dynamic between him and his master is a lot of fun. Way more than I thought I'd have with it. The fights are way over the top, and the way the finale happened was like, what is going on in this world? It's kind of nuts and stupid. But I still have a soft spot for it. I think it's really good for that reason. But because of its ending and its weaknesses this year, I can't put it up higher than C tier. But I do think it's worth checking out if you haven't. The character designs are not for everyone, but I still think it's pretty good. Okay, Warrior High School, another manhwa that I didn't expect to enjoy this much. This one is pretty good, and I'm looking forward to Season 2 when it comes out. Not announced yet, but I am looking forward to it. For the person that asked, I don't know when it's going to come out. But yeah, like just the idea of schools being a place for train, not an original idea. There's been a couple of manhwa that touched on very similar concepts over the years. But I think it's one of the ones that does it the best. So I'm gonna put this up there near the. Look at the other stuff in B tier. Oh, it's definitely not as good as that. It's gonna put it in the C tier. Okay, I grow stronger by eating. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I did not like this manhwa. It's probably the first manhwa that I have finished that at the end of it I'm like, you know what? I did not really like it, and the ending did not feel very satisfying. Maybe it's just because I didn't enjoy it much. I'm going to put this in the D tier. This is probably going to be the most controversial thing I put out there. Last but not least, the Swordmaster's youngest son is really good. Like, is the concept original of a character that's rejected by his family that comes back after a regression, grows up from being a kid, and, okay, some of that is a little original, and becomes this crazy good swordsman, is good. It's really good, and the dynamics with his family and the people that he needs to defend himself against but also own at the same time, solid A tier. Guys, if you like my tier list, please leave a comment down below. If you completely disagree and think this is absolutely ridiculous and stupid, you're going to leave a comment anyway, so please do. It's perfectly fine. Your list is not my list, and that is absolutely okay. With that, guys, have a great day.